Hey guys, welcome back to the 6th video in my Ableton Live 10 Basics series. Today I'm going to go over how to save and export your projects. This will be a rather short video, but before we begin, just a quick reminder to leave a like down below and hit that subscribe button. So to start this video off, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to save your projects, which is a pretty straightforward process. We just go up here and click File. Then we click Save Live Set, and when prompted, it will ask you to name your project. When it comes to naming conventions, just try to come up with something original and maybe put your BPM and your genre in with it. This will help whenever you're sifting through other projects, so that way you know exactly which one you're working on and you can just go straight to it. Another thing I'd like to cover while I'm here is what's called Collect All and Save. What this does is it packages all your samples and whatnot into the project file, so that way if you were to send this off to a friend or somebody for collaboration, then this would ensure that all your samples and other elements will go with that project. One last thing, if you do plan to collaborate, is you'll want to freeze any tracks that contain things that your friend does not have. Whenever you collect all and save, it will save the MIDI and the samples and a lot of other things. But let's say you have a copy of FabFilter Pro Q3, but your friend does not have that. Then any tracks that contain that Pro Q3, you will want to go over and click Freeze Track. What this does is Ableton Live will essentially create a sample of that sound. So that way, whenever you send the project over for collaboration, what's being played is more or less an audio sample of the track that you froze. The nice thing about freezing tracks is even after you freeze a track and it more or less gets converted to audio, you can always come back and unfreeze it if need be. The last thing we're going to cover while we're talking about saving is backups. If you come over here to Current Project and you see this right here, you can open that up and it'll actually give you access to all the previous save points within your project. This is really handy if you made a change in the project and you just really didn't like the way it turned out and you wanted to revert back to an older version of the project. The next thing we're going to talk about is exporting. To export a project, we come up here to File. We scroll down to Export Audio/Video, and this window will open up. We will go ahead and cover the different aspects of this window and what they do. The first part is the render section. This is where you more or less select the parts of the track or the timestamps at which you want the track to start and end. You can also go back, and if you have a track or multiple tracks selected, then you can go back into your export window and select selected tracks only. What this means is that Ableton will only export the tracks that you selected. But note that if you're using any return effects like a reverb or anything, to turn on this part right here where it says include return and master effects. If you don't turn this on, then your return tracks will not be rendered. So we're going to switch back to the master. Now down here we have some additional options. We have render as loop, which this is mainly for use if you are going to be performing live with Ableton. We have convert to mono, which when this is turned on, it will just convert your stereo track into a mono track. We also have normalize, which what this does is it takes the highest peak of your song and brings it up to take up the maximum amount of headroom. The next thing we have is this option to create analysis file. Ableton Live actually creates these every time you load a song or a sample inside of Ableton. This more or less just creates a duplicate of the file, so that way whenever Ableton Live opens up, it doesn't have to reanalyze all the samples and audio that you brought into the project. Next up we have our sample rate, and I'm sure you'll find plenty of debate on the internet about which sample rate is best, but just note that the CD Redbook standard is 44.1 kilohertz. Now, if you're working with film, then you'll want to use 48 kilohertz. This apparently has to do with how the audio lines up with the film during the editing process. I'm not really a film editor, so I wouldn't know exactly how the process works, but I just know that if you're creating audio for film, they expect you to use 48 kilohertz. Down here we have this option called Encode PCM. I'm not exactly sure what PCM stands for. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you want to export in something such as a WAV file or a FLAC file, then you'll need to enable this. Note that the standard for CD distribution is 16-bit WAV files at 44.1 kilohertz. Now, if you just wanted to have a really high fidelity version of your song, you could bump this up to 24-bit or even a lossless quality. But note that with each jump, you will also have a bigger file size. Below that, there's this option to dither. Now, I'm not going to go in the nitty-gritty details behind dithering, but just understand that you'll want to use dither anytime that you are going down in bit depth. So if you're going from 32-bit to 24-bit, use dither. If you're going from 24 to 16-bit, use dither. Basically, if you're going anything below 32-bit, then use dither. Some plugins will actually dither for you, such as FabFilter Pro L, which is what I typically use for a limiter on my projects, and it has a really great built-in dither. So I actually don't need to use this. The next option is to encode MP3. This is a lossy file format, and you may or may not notice a difference in the audio quality between something like 24-bit WAV and 320 MP3. Personally, I find that a 320 kilobytes per second MP3 sounds pretty decent. Now, if you're going anything below that, like 256 or 128 kilobytes, then you can really start to notice the aliasing, and it just has a massive effect on your overall sound quality. So once you have determined your sample rate and the type of file you would like to export, you just simply click export. I am not actually going to click that because I have no need to do so. Alrighty guys, I think that about covers it. I hope you learned something from this video, and I hope you can make it back for the next one. Until then, you guys take care and have an amazing day.